Вот нет, да. Ну нет. Ну, подожди. Знаю, вот это. Здорово. 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 Ну, это решили. Нет. Какой еще литнист? Наоборот. Наоборот. Наоборот, да, это не видно. Да ну вас нахер, блин, что ты все время вот это, да. Простите, разговариваешь. Ну нет, наоборот, не надо, и думать себе так же. Да. Ой, не надо. Вот это есть.
Кто не знает этого? Надо. Людмила, Люкнер, Брюков, Холодовый,
Чеснок. Чеснок. Что такое? Опа. Насыщamos. Опа. Бычки. Всегда у нас есть. Да что ты делаешь? Зачем мне говорить? Наоборот, потому что вот это, да, вот это он тебя говорил. Да. Ну вот он знает, честно,
Это она так думает. Так нет. А, вот это, да. Поймаю. Нет.
What does a Swiss watch, film projector, and CNC machining center have in common? This odd-looking mechanism, and today we'll be discussing what it is, how it works, and why you know exactly what it sounds like. Let's get started. Just before we get started, I'd like to say that this video is brought to you by the Great Courses Plus. And you can go to the Great Courses Plus /Makers Muse to sign up for a free 1-month trial today. This is the Geneva drive, a gear mechanism that translates continuous rotational movement into indexed intermittent movement. It's one of the earliest of all intermittent motion mechanisms and derives its name from its use in Swiss watches in the 17th century. However, it's entirely likely that similar mechanisms were in use from a much earlier period. The mechanism consists of a pin which rotates in a slot of the driven wheel and pulls it one step forwards before the circular portions interact and lock the movement for another rotation of the drive wheel. The driven wheel has a highly unique look to it, which is what drew my attention to this mechanism in the first place, and you can have from 3 to around 18 index location, or also known as dwells, on the driven wheel. And when designed with 4 dwells, you can see how it gets its look to it, which is what drew my attention to this mechanism in the first place. And you can have from 3 to around 18 index location, or also known as dwells, on the driven wheel. And when designed with 4 dwells, you can see how it gets its other name, the Maltese cross mechanism. So I drew this in Fusion 360. You can get the 3D printing files here on the card above, and I'll be making a video in future on how I drew it. It's actually fairly straightforward, but you do need to use a lot of constraints within Fusion 360 to draw it properly. So there are several forms this mechanism can take, with this external drive wheel being the most popular. Another variation is the internal Geneva drive and the funky looking spherical Geneva drive, with the added bonus of translating the motion at a right angle. There's also another variation called a Geneva stop, which is very similar to the external drive, however then it will stop at a certain point and be prohibited from motion at a right angle. There's also another variation called a Geneva stop, which is very similar to the external drive, however then it will stop at a certain point and be prohibited from rotating any further. This was used in watches to prevent overwinding of the spring mechanism. So what's so special about this mechanism, you might be asking? Well, despite its fairly simple nature, it actually accomplishes a movement purely mechanically that's actually quite useful in many industries. Let's take a look at how it operates using this cordless drill. The drive pin engages and moves the driven wheel over one stop. However, it's not a smooth linear movement between each dwell like you might expect, but it's actually instead quite violent in terms of the acceleration curve, which looks along the lines of this. It flicks the driven wheel over so fast, in fact, that when you're spinning it with a drill at roughly 400 RPM, you actually can barely see the transition between each dwell period, which is pretty crazy actually. It's this behavior that found the Geneva mechanism widely used in early film projectors, where it was used to quickly advance the film between frames, leaving each exposed for a set period of time. Remember at the start I said that you know the sound of this mechanism? Well, it's true. Almost everyone knows that old-timey clacking sound associated with old-fashioned film projectors. And so what about CNC machines? Well, accurate indexing of the tool change carousel is a must for fast, pre-programmed tool changes, and many older machining centers make use of a huge Geneva drive to safely and accurately index each new tool into the spindle when you do a tool change, as you can see in this video. I can also pretty much guarantee that this mechanism would have found use in military applications, but I couldn't find any specific examples, so let me know in the comments if you know of any. I'd certainly like to hear all about it. So you'll notice I mentioned old film projectors and older CNC machines. Well, there's a pretty good reason for that. You see, despite the Geneva drive being a really cool and simple intermittent motion mechanism, it has some pretty huge downsides, some of which you might have already noticed, starting with wear. So unlike a geared mechanism where the motion components roll by each other, this mechanism consists almost entirely of sliding contact. The pin slides into the slot, and the dwell cycle has the cylindrical faces sliding across one another. So can you imagine how much friction and heat would be involved with one of these spinning at several hundred RPMs for hours? How much friction and heat? Sliding contact. The pin slides into the slot, and the dwell cycle has the cylindrical faces sliding across one another. So can you imagine how much friction and heat would be involved with one of these spinning at several hundred RPMs for hours, days, or even years of operation? Because of this, Geneva drives are known to wear out very fast. However, similar to cams in your engine, you can protect them using oil. In fact, film projectors used to encase the entire mechanism in an entire enclosure full of oil, so the entire mechanism was always coated with oil to help prevent overheating and undue wear. However, even with this, it often fail quickly, and the movement relies on high precision as well, so any wear would actually lead to premature failure quite quickly. As you can see with this mechanism, if I rotate this part here and then put some weight here, it starts jamming up. Another huge disadvantage, depending on application, is the acceleration and deceleration curves mentioned earlier. This means these drives vibrate hugely under operation, and they make a heck of a noise too at higher speeds. So in most applications, you probably want a smooth transition between each dwell cycle, and there is actually patents detailing attempts to modify Geneva mechanisms to make them more accurately provide this, but the popularity of this mechanism is definitely not what it was 20 to 30 years ago, and that's just because of modern automation technology. You can easily control movement precisely now using low-cost servos or stepper motors, just as you'd find in your 3D printer. There's no need for an elegant mechanical solution. So that's the Geneva mechanism, guys. A gorgeous, elegant, and outdated solution for intermittent motion. And next time you hear that film projector sound, you'll know exactly what made it. A big thanks to the Great Courses Plus sponsoring this episode on Maker's Muse. If you enjoyed
Эй, через 3 часа будет штучка такая. Бррр. Бррр, бррр, бррр. Бррр, бррр. Что у нас будет? Наживать. Слушайте. А часа-то что ли? Нет, это
Спокойно, и даже за такой смартфон.
И за такой?
Ну да.
И за такой?
И даже за такой смартфон вы получите скидку до 4000.
Pablo Picasso was one of the most influential artists in the world, a true creative giant. We all know that, and yet the question remains, how does somebody get to that level? How does somebody get to the level of being so prolific that they create over 50,000 works over the course of their lifetime, leaving behind a series of masterpieces that are coveted to this day? What am I trying to do here exactly? I have found it fascinating to put myself in the shoes of people that inspire me and that have shaped history as a way to deep dive into their worlds and to see what I can learn. Well, personally, I actually have really mixed feelings about Picasso and the person that he was and the impact that he had on humanity. So to get to the bottom of this, I'm going to spend some time in his world, living the way that he did. I want to better understand the man that was this complicated artist. Oh man. I'm really excited to do this, honestly, but I first want to share what I've gathered on his schedule during his time in Paris. This process of creating a picture of how he lived was greatly helped by Mason Curry's book, Daily Rituals, How Artists Work. Basically, Picasso would start off his day at a time I think most of us would consider quite late, 11 a.m. For the next few hours, he would have breakfast and then see friends up until about 2 or 3 p.m. At the Boulevard de Clichy, he would shut himself in the studio from 2 p.m. and work there until at least dusk. He'd have dinner from 10 to 11 p.m. and then he'd go back to work for another 4 hours until 3 a.m. and then he'd go to bed and the cycle would begin again. I'm not gonna lie, this routine, this schedule is very exciting to me in how counter it is to every self-help, self-improvement, and productivity guru out there. How many times have we all heard that we must have a morning routine? And this approach essentially obliterates the potential of doing that, considering I'm going to be starting at the end of the morning, essentially in the afternoon. This is more or less the opposite of what I did when I tried Ben Franklin's routine. I don't know, I guess I'm curious, and I will admit I found it very difficult to maintain my own sleep schedule in terms of regular hours and waking up early. I found that I naturally go to bed quite late. And so I actually think this is going to be easier for me to stick with and follow through on. I'm also really excited about this because I have found I am so much more creative at night, in the evening, and this seems like it's built around that. Interestingly, it didn't seem like painting ever tired him out. That's why painters live so long. While I work, I leave my body outside the door, the way Muslims take off their shoes before entering the mosque. That's why painters live so long. While I work, I leave my body outside the door, the way Muslims take off their shoes before entering the mosque. Alright. Day one, good morning. Hello. This is going to take a little bit of time for me to get used to. This is quite late. It's already 11:30. Honestly, over the last few weeks, I've been building up to this point where I wake up this late, but even then, it's just late. This is late. I'm not used to this. I like to paint a lot this week. It's something that I don't make enough time for, but it's also going to have to be balanced out with my other work, making this video, writing, all the other projects that I have in the works. I guess I'm going to have, it's not really a breakfast. She didn't really have breakfast. At this point, it's lunch. I'm excited about this because I feel like Picasso did such a good job of creating so much space for creative work. He was singularly focused on this, and I love that. So let's see where this takes me. There's one thing that I've learned in doing this. It's that adapting to a new schedule can take time. Hello. It is 12:23 a.m., as in nighttime, and I would ordinarily be probably heading to bed right around now, but I will be painting for the next 2.5 hours. It's kind of fun to give myself permission to do this creative work at this sort of unorthodox time. I don't need anybody's permission. Okay, so I feel a need to give a little bit of context here. Picasso has played a significant role in my life as a large source of creative inspiration. My mom is a painter, among other things, and so I found that she really inspired me to start painting on my own as a kid, as a teenager. I remember my first paintings being in the Cubist style because I was just drawn to it. And it's fair to say that he was one of my heroes growing up. But as I got older, and learned more about him, my views on him definitely changed. It became clear to me that he was not someone I would ever want to meet. I've done a considerable amount of research and reading on the man, and I think, quite honestly, I am afraid I'd be disappointed with what I would find. On one hand, he spearheaded entire art movements, like Cubism, among other things, and had this incredible ability to reinvent himself decade after decade. But at the same time, he was once described to me by the French as imbuvable, undrinkable, self-absorbed, competitive, a showman. From what I've gathered, he was kind of an asshole, especially with the women that he was with, which undeniably affects how I see him. And there are no caveats to that. And yet, you will find him in all of the most prestigious museums around the world. And this is in no way a justification for the human being that he was. But so much of his work was brilliant and illustrated in empathy for people that had suffered at the hands of violence, denouncing war. It's hard for me to square these contradictions all in one person. Alright, I wanted to give a little update here. It is day 3, and I've struggled a little bit to get into the flow of this routine, but I have an idea. I think what's missing right now is a commitment, a singular commitment to a task at a time. I have noticed that in my life, I attempt to multitask or jump from one thing to another far too often, and I'm doing this to myself. So in the spirit of Picasso's incredible focus on his work, I've decided to split up my days a little bit differently. It's still in the framework of Picasso's schedule, but what I'm going to do is commit 4-hour blocks of time to the 3 main things that I want to focus on right now. Video, writing, and painting. I'm ready for this, okay? I'm ready for this. Even having said that, I feel like I've gotten a lot of work done already, and I've been enjoying painting quite a bit. I'm taking this as an opportunity to be, once again, more mindful and more intentional about my work. I think this is the secret sauce right here. Like, we all talk about all the techniques and the hacks and the productivity boosting whatever. This is the secret sauce. It is having control over the intentional flow of your attention and energy. It is day 4. Things are going great. I'm honestly really enjoying this so much. I thought I would share a progress update. I don't really know where it's going, but I'm having a lot of fun with it. I might tweak the guy a little bit still. This one I feel a little bit more mixed about, honestly. I like the feeling. Painting for me has always just been a therapeutic hobby, really, more than anything else. I don't think I want to necessarily make money from it. I don't think I could in the first place. Much like Winston Churchill, who found that painting helped him deal with depressive episodes in his life, I just find that this helps me deal with the stresses in my life. And I'll be honest, I'm finding the permission to do this at this hour incredibly liberating. It's become my favorite part of the day. Obviously, it would be a massive luxury to be able to paint all day, and I am working throughout the day, but these hours at night where I'm alone painting have been just glorious. I get to be in my own little universe. There's nothing better. There's nothing better. I have more canvases here, so we're going to keep going. One thing that really sticks out to me is how much he despised distractions. Without great solitude, no serious work is possible. There's a famous quote of his. Today is day 8. I've decided to continue doing this for a second week to really give this a fair run. I'm starting to really miss having mornings, I'm not going to lie. I do feel sluggish well into the beginning of the afternoon when Picasso really began working.
Круто. Флагиш. Дернул флагиша. Ну,
So I'm feeling like over the long term this would be kind of an unhealthy rhythm to maintain.
Добро пожаловать на канал Geekbrains. Здесь мы разбираем самые волнующие темы из мира IT. В этом выпуске мы расскажем еще об одной интересной профессии – DevOps-инженер. Мало кто точно представляет, чем он занимается, да и название у этой профессии весьма таинственное. Учитывая большой спрос на рынке труда в специалистах этого направления, мы расскажем, какую пользу они приносят миру технологий. Итак, поехали. Кто такой DevOps-инженер? DevOps – это не просто набор техник, это философия. DevOps – это аббревиатура названия Союза профессионалов Development Operations, которая появилась в 2008 году. Чтобы успевать за скоростью развития IT-сферы, потребовалось изменение культуры компаний в области разработки и внедрения программного обеспечения. Объединение разработчиков и системных инженеров в одно сообщество позволило оптимизировать процесс создания программного продукта. Для чего нужен DevOps-инженер и чем он занимается? DevOps-инженер собирает воедино все составляющие проекта, от написания кода до тестирования и выпуска приложения. В задачи DevOps-специалиста входит непрерывная доставка программного обеспечения до клиента, обеспечение безопасности ПО, автоматизация технических процессов, запуск и поддержка сред разработки, непрерывное улучшение инструментов и технических процессов. Так как отделы работают независимо друг от друга, иногда возникают сложности и проблемы в работе. DevOps-инженер ломает стену непонимания между отделами разработки и администрирования и является связующим звеном между ними. Понимает архитектуру продукта и порядок тестирования, имеет навыки разработки, способен оценить риски безопасности и знает подходы и средства для автоматизации. А еще балансирует между планированием работы команды и ожиданиями заказчика. Фишка DevOps-инженера в том, что он объединяет в себе сразу несколько профессий. Билд-инженер, специалист по сборке кода, релиз-инженер, специалист по выпуску кода в производство, автомейшн-инженер, специалист по автоматизации и внедрению кода, security-инженер, специалист по тестированию программ, выявлению уязвимых мест. Где нужен DevOps-инженер? DevOps-инженер может принести пользу любой организации, чья деятельность связана с разработкой приложений или управлением большим количеством серверов. DevOps-инженеров нанимают такие IT-гиганты, как Amazon, Adobe и Google. Еще они работают на Yandex, Mail.ru Group и другие большие компании. Сколько зарабатывает DevOps-инженер? У DevOps-инженера есть все шансы с легкостью найти себе работу в любой компании мира. Средний месячный заработок такого специалиста по миру составляет от 8 до 10 тысяч долларов. В США за месяц он будет...
I'm trying to squeeze in working out and errands and everything else that needs to happen outside of work in those first 2-3 hours that I have in the day. He worked up until the day he died at age 91, literally painting till 3 a.m. on Sunday, April 8th, which was just hours before his death. That's insane. That is dedication right there. That's one of the things that I like so much about Picasso, or rather what he represents for me. He was unapologetic about what he did. Think about the time and place too. Think about the world that he came from. What he was doing was so different from what existed at the time, what was acceptable. Alright, we're coming to the end of week 2, and I think this is where this experiment is going to come to an end. If anything, this has made me intensely aware of how much multitasking I do and how detrimental it can be. There is no replacement for singular focus on something. I really enjoyed large portions of these last couple of weeks, but this does not feel like a fully sustainable rhythm, for me at least. And increasingly I've just felt like I've been out of sync. It's really hard to feel motivated and to like get going when you wake up so late. For me, this schedule really illustrates that there is no correct way to go about living your life. And finding a rhythm that fits you is the most important thing. He did all of this without any visible knowledge, interest, or application of anything pertaining to productivity. If anything, this reinforces my feelings that productivity and so many things that are attached to this word is so overhyped, so unnecessary. I think all anyone really needs to live by are a few core principles: a mission, an outlet, and energy. As I try to paint a little bit more of a nuanced picture of his life and his work, it is clear that he was dedicated to what he did, but I wonder to the cost. You only have the level of genius and output of somebody like Picasso without a darker, tortured side. There's a quote from the book Life with Picasso that was written by Françoise Gillot, which was one of his lovers, also an accomplished painter, that really illustrates this point. Everybody has the same energy potential. The average person wastes his in a dozen little ways. I bring mine to bear on only one thing, my paintings, and everything is sacrificed to it. You and everyone else, myself included. He strikes me as a creative genius with a certain degree of emotional poverty in terms of intelligence or support. This made him destructive in many ways, which makes me sad, honestly. This is a reminder that even my heroes are human, and that human beings can be petty, they can be lost, they can be assholes. That being said, I cannot deny, despite all of my critiques on his character, I truly respect his work and his devotion to what he did. Picasso had a fundamental belief that, in his words, art is a form of magic. And I think that's a pillar of the legacy that he left behind. He really did things his own way. Little did he know he would be inspiring artists a century later. Or maybe he did, and we'll never know. Every child is an artist. The problem is how to remain an artist once he grows up. This video is sponsored by Audible, which is probably my favorite app on my phone. If you haven't tried Audible, I highly recommend it. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like I've learned so much thanks to the fact that I could listen to audiobooks. Audible is the leading provider of spoken word entertainment all in one place. They have a humongous library of audiobooks and podcasts. I'm a big fan of listening to audiobooks when I paint, before I go to bed, when I go on walks. There's a lot of opportunities. One audiobook that absolutely blew my mind was The Botany of Desire by Michael Pollan. I felt like it opened my eyes, and the writing was sublime. If you have any interest in nature or human psychology, I highly recommend it. I remember listening to it while driving to different shoots a few years ago while I was still freelancing as a filmmaker. He also wrote and narrated How to Change Your Mind, which was about his exploration in the world of psychedelics, which was also just fantastic. I highly recommend it. You can start listening now with a 30-day Audible trial. Choose one audiobook and get full access to the Plus catalog absolutely free. Just visit
Что-то мне подсыпано. Не, я не знаю даже. Пиво любим, пиво. background. Приятно это смотреть. Это уже не знаю.
Hello everyone, my name is Narisol. I'm a pianist composer, and on my channel I create videos covering a variety of subject matter when it comes to music. Everything from composition, piano technique, studying different genres, and also breaking down different composers' styles. That series is called How to Sound Like, and I covered Franz Liszt last year. how to sound like Don's lips. If you've seen the video already, you may remember that I referenced a trip to Weimar to research more on Don's lips.
All the great musicians came to Weimar, to this really tiny place, and they were making great work.
I mean, you could take this sheet and play it. It's written so neatly.
He was a noble character. He never made a break. And came every year in summer. He left his gardener notes there and gave him another chapter for free.
This is a last instrument from Franz Liszt, like my list is a line, and then this Wagner is a line.
In Weimar, I synced up with two of my really good friends, Joe Sabia and Julius Meltzer.
They're looking for members.
Can I join?
Нет, я не работяга, я просто...
Да.